can see people joining here, which is good. So we have strong numbers. Pete this afternoon signed up for a session, though it's late morning your time. I'll wait and do the full introduction for you in a minute when we have more people after joining. And just for the record, in terms of kind of an overview, we have companies who are across different verticals. Some of them are technology companies, a lot of technology companies, some financial services. Some companies, the average I think would probably be about 12 or more countries that they're based in. And from what I would know of some of the companies, they have a mix of multi-vendor kind of profile in terms of their vendor strategy. And then some have chosen to centralize into an aggregator. So I think we'll have a strong mix of people who are either used to aggregator technology or looking to source some independent technology or design some. And your topic will be very relevant across the board. So we can always ask some questions as well. We can make the audience do some work if you want.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the answers of the polls. That would be good to see.
Yeah. So interestingly, I know you gave some sessions at the recent APA Congress, and I was working on one with Joe Ziskett from BMW about reports and analytics and other technology. And because it was online, we chose to have a few videos with people about the topic. So I contacted several companies to talk to them about the analytics tools that they were using. And actually none of them felt they really had it fine-tuned enough yet to actually talk about it. There were about 5 companies, and some of them were very large and some of them were like on high growth paths. So I think they'll be very interested in the technology that's available, or what you see as the trend of the next gen payroll technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's exciting stuff for sure. I'm going to just shut my email off so we don't have any pop-ups here while we're going.
Anything? Yeah, or we might see anything too interesting.
Yeah, nothing too exciting, but just noise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My children have learned how to use email because of COVID-19, which is the problem. Mom, I'm hungry, and it shows up on the screen. Go to the fridge.
They know how to work technology. The kids do today, man, for sure.
I know, yeah. We could use them as a test group for the next generation payroll technology.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Okay, so I can see the attendees are all logging in now. We'll have a little burst in a minute as it crosses the hour. So we might just wait another minute. Okay, we have our good colleague Dan Dicus in from APA. Hi Dan, good to have you with us. The GPMI in HQ in the US. He's listening, Pete. We need to be careful.
Hi Dan, hope you're doing good, man.
Yeah, he's on mute. He's going to have to unmute if he's going to answer. Okay, we're just crossing the hour now, so more people still continue to log in. So we'll just give it maybe another 10 or 20 seconds.
Perfect, yeah.
There's a little orange triangle. Okay, yeah, so that's the people who have logged in but are doing other work until it starts. That's fine, that'll clear out. The little tools here. Oh, I think Dan has replied to the questions. Hello all, says Dan. Hi Dan. So he has responded. Okay, so I might just kick off. So good afternoon all on the European time zones. Good morning all in the American time zones. This is Fidelma McGurk here from the GPMI Dublin chapter, and we're very pleased to have our second webinar-based event during COVID times. And today we're very honoured to have as our speaker and industry expert, Mr. Pete Tiliakos. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Pete. Pete is the principal analyst with NelsonHall. So I'm sure you're all aware of NelsonHall research. It's one of our guiding Northern Stars to inform us from an industry perspective what the trends are outside of our own verticals or outside of our own actual country operations. We can take guidance from NelsonHall on what's happening across the industry and across the world. So Pete leads that research, and I know is very involved at many industry events from the HCM and also the global payroll perspective. And I know I always learn a lot from your research, Pete. So I'm going to hand over to Pete, and our format today is Pete's going to deliver a presentation about his research. If you have any questions or comments or ideas, you are welcome to enter those into the chat function, and then we will come to those questions and moderate those at the end of the call, either with myself or my colleague Aoife Flynn from Payslip. So happy to hand over to Pete, and we really look forward to this talk today. Thanks very much, Pete.
Yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, thank you everyone for having me. Really proud to be here. I'm a big fan of the GPMI and love working closely with them. So when Aoife and Fidelma came to me and said, hey, we'd love to see you present the trends in next-gen payroll to the group, I was like, absolutely, I'd love to do that. So really happy to be here, and thank you for having me. So let's jump in a little bit here to our, well, that's me, Pete Tiliakis. Just a little bit about me. As Fidelma mentioned, I am a principal analyst with NelsonHall. NelsonHall, if you're not familiar, is a 20-year young, I guess you could say. Last year we turned 20. Industry insights firm, analyst firm who covers a number of outsourcing segments, including IT, finance, but we also have a very strong HR technology and services practice where I lead our global payroll research and have the privilege of working with the top providers in the space and understanding what they're doing and how buyers are putting these things to use. And I also cover our HCM technology research as well. So your major platforms like Workday, SuccessFactors, Oracle, Ultimate, any of those, I do work closely with them and have some extensive research and such on those platforms as well. If you're interested in following me, you can follow me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with anyone and help as much as I can. I think we push a lot of really good information out. So if you want to stay close to the global payroll world, feel free to jump on Twitter and check that out. The one thing I did mention to Fidelma in the beginning, we do offer a very nice buyers community that you can be a part of if you'd like. If you're interested in that, let Aoife or Fidelma know, and we'll share your email address with us, and we will submit that to our buyers group to have you included on any communications that go out. It's a complimentary group. There's actually a sanitized control of that where we don't allow vendors or consultants to come in that, so no one's going to sell you anything. And we've started actually doing both vendor side, private vendor side, but also private buyer side webinars. I think we're going to be doing them every quarter now, and we'll have another one here coming up in September. And if you'd like to be a part of that, I would encourage you to do that. We held our first one here a couple of weeks ago, and it was quite successful. And we are trying to make it as conversational as possible, so it's not just slides. We do like to dialogue with the buyers and understand what they're thinking as well, and answer questions that we can as analysts. So if that's something that's you're interested in, please do let them know. We'll get you connected to that. So just for the agenda today, you know, I have presented this a couple of times. I just did this back with the GPMI. Global Payroll Week. So if you've seen some of this, you know, it will be a little bit of a repeat, but at the same time, a lot has happened since that has occurred, and we've certainly got some COVID impacts, obviously, that have come about that I'm going to add to this today when we're talking through it. So it will be a little bit different in that regard. But we're going to look at some of the trends that are impacting HR and payroll and what's kind of taking us towards this next gen world. We'll also look at what some of these emerging technologies are when we say next generation. And then, of course, at the end, I've got some examples which we may or may not have time to actually cover, but you can view those by yourself. And then we can certainly spend as much time as possible answering questions. I know that's often the benefit to a lot of people is getting to have a dialogue with us. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. You know, much of what you probably will see on this slide is something that you could each point to and go, yeah, that's happening for us, or yes, I've seen that. You know, digitalization is absolutely having a massive impact on what we've been calling the future of work for a long time. And in my opinion, and I think in a lot of analysts' opinion, we are at a point where we are at the future of work. It is here. It's not the future anymore. You know, COVID, I think, accelerated or fundamentally accelerated a lot of firms' digitalization efforts and rapidly advanced them into a position where they had to react and had to do something in order to maintain business as usual and continue their continuity. So the acceleration literally was pushed to the floor whenever COVID sort of kicked off in March, or even earlier for some countries, and will continue, I think, as firms continue to adapt and reinvent around these new norms that we're calling it. Certainly some of the things that are driving a lot of the digitalization is obviously cloud technology. We no longer see this being kind of a large market, mid-market thing. It's absolutely an all market thing. All solutions are being built on the cloud. They're all being made extensible through integrations in order to give buyers the ability to connect and leverage the pieces and parts that make sense for them. And really enabling some of those digital enablers for firms to build into things like artificial intelligence, which is having an absolute profound impact on HR and payroll, which has long been very manual, as many of you know, and the ability to use cognitive capabilities and cognitive technology to address those things and offload that manual work to bots is really giving firms with large volumes a significant amount of relief, and will continue to shape how these solutions come about. Artificial intelligence and ML, machine learning, are going to fundamentally be a part of any new solution that's being brought to market. I don't think there's a space, a segment of HR where we talk to a vendor that is not purpose building everything with an AI predictive, sort of mindset. So the extreme personalization element of HR is going to continue. That's much what we're seeing in our own personal lives. I think if you watched Apple this week launch, their iOS refresh across their devices, the theme that kept coming up was personalization, and that has really become very apparent in HR and payroll as well, especially as you have employee engagement being so important, and employees needing to own their careers and their data and drive themselves, or own some of the driving of their own careers as well. Things like on-demand payroll has absolutely, again, taken off, both from the perspective of some of the issues that it solves, and I'll talk about that as we go, but fundamentally the need to move funds around to people in a rapid and touchless fashion obviously bore itself to demand when the COVID issue came about. And as you know, as many of you know, the vitality of getting money to your workers became very critical at that point. And having more options for doing that, I think it was better for firms that were able to use that. But also, on-demand payroll is addressing a number of different issues around paycheck to paycheck lifestyles, and being able to help people be a little bit more financially well off or financially secure is where that solution is going. The future of work, I would say it's the future of now. I mean, it's really, or the now of work, I should say. It's here. Digitalization, globalization, all of these things are going to continue to trend upward. We're seeing more and more smaller market organizations creep their footprints to an international locations, much like their upmarket peers. So you're not just seeing global payroll be exclusive to big companies, big conglomerates, or big multinationals. It's even the middle market, the smaller market firms are tending to start to expand their footprints and needing support for workers around the globe. And certainly we see much more emphasis now on payroll being a very critical element to the broader HR transformation initiative. It's a key aspect, as I mentioned, of financial wellness, but also the overall employee experience. And I think that I'd like to just say a big pat on the back to all of you who helped get the world through these trying times. Payroll was such a critical piece when all of this happened, that I think that it really shined and showed its value to the organization, and hopefully will continue to bring attention to the process as more than just a simple back office. You're not just down there cutting checks, right? You're doing a lot more than that. And I think it's really been an opportunity for payroll to shine. Certainly one of the things that we can commonly continue to see and hear is that statutory requirements are becoming much more intense. Certainly COVID forced a lot of new legislation, a lot of questions, a lot of concern. And what I heard from vendors and buyers as we've gone through this is that those that had a modern solution, those that had a partner to help them, an outsourced managed partner, were much more likely to, at least here in the US, to access funds and support from the government to continue paying their workers, much more so than maybe those that didn't. The interpretation of these statutory requirements is difficult. Tapping into the data, the right data to respond to them is challenging and often hard if you don't have the tools or the clean data to get that. So I think what we saw is that managed service environments really showed they can support and de-risk payroll fundamentally by having modern technology, by having a partner to kind of turn to that is in the business of doing payroll, helping you kind of navigate and get through that. So I think that was a really good opportunity for payroll to show its value. So let's just jump ahead here and get into some of the emerging technologies that are coming into play. Really, when we say next generation, we're talking about a cloud-based offering. We're talking about one that is tightly integrated across the other technologies and modules. Hopefully, you can leverage an HCM and payroll solution that is core HR and payroll integrated in the same platform. But often, if that's not possible or that's not a fit to your environment, or integration will provide that ability to connect those pieces that make sense. It's not uncommon to see firms, large firms mostly, going out and saying, look, we've solved a lot of our other areas of HR, but we haven't really addressed core HR yet, and they're still deciding. And fundamentally, whichever one they plug in will probably fit to what they're doing, assuming they stay along a certain strategic focus. But fundamentally, it gives them the ability to flex and sort of create the unique technology environment that's going to support them. Most are able to get onto a core HR payroll time system, and then from there kind of connect the pieces they need. But there is a lot of opportunity to leverage unique solutions through the integrations. Like I said, intelligent automation is absolutely critical now. Having RPA, robotic process automation, underpinning your process is going to relieve a ton of manual effort. And of course, the AI and machine learning, as I mentioned, is going to add the cognitive element that's going to put the thought process against your data and against your process and get it right every time. The other thing we're seeing much more prevalent in solutions is the embedded predictive analytics. And analytic data has become absolutely critical to driving people insights and helping the business make decisions. And I'm a big proponent of the fact that I believe payroll has a ton, if not some of the more valuable data that the firm holds, but they just don't use it or know how to use it. So the fact that payroll is getting the ability to tap into that data in a more strategic manner and help the business utilize it is really critical. And we've seen that put to use here as firms are going back to work and they're looking at their global workforce and they're saying, hey, we need to make some decisions here. Having that good analytic data globally is critical. And then of course, a robust user interface. I can't really emphasize how much the user experience is being relentlessly focused on by product software providers, not just in HCM, but in payroll. And you're really seeing the convergence of all this technology come together, whether it's mobile, whether it's IoT, AR and VR are even coming around, virtual reality for learning and things like that. So the more that the user can be augmented and the more commercial grade that the experience is, the more engaging the employee is going to be with the platform, but also more accurate you're going to have the outcomes be. And then, of course, any next-gen solution needs to be underpinned by a compliant, on-time, accurate, up-to-date with the statutory requirements element. So there has to be an ongoing, strong focus on compliance. And then, of course, hopefully, it is cost-effective and, of course, scalable to meet your needs as you continue to flex and grow. When we dive into some of these areas of technology, I think it's important to understand that cloud has really become the launching pad for much of the transformation that you see going on, both in the HR world, but also the payroll world. We think about half or slightly more than half of the organizations out there have transitioned to cloud for core HR, and we certainly expect that that's going to continue to accelerate. And oftentimes what we find is once the firms have selected a core HR system and they've moved to the cloud for HR, they have then decided to begin looking at their global payroll transformation and doing so within about a year. We today see, like I said, the majority of contracts are being delivered on cloud platforms. There are some that will offer the on-premise solutions still, but I think you find that still in very pockets of federal government and areas where there's been some inability to move necessarily from a security perspective to the cloud. But I think those are coming around as well, as we're seeing more and more cloud updates, even in that sector. And then again, as I mentioned, you do see the vendors making it much easier to get to cloud. They're using a lot of the technology that we talked about to make data movement easier and really get that rapid deployment up and running so you can start to see your ROI faster. I won't spend a lot of time here, but I think as I probably mentioned before, and you've probably seen, is that the user experience has really become the business case for HR transformation. The employee has to feel engaged at work, right? And it's more than technology, right? It's around meaningful work. It's around helping them, get to their career goals and also get to their career or their career path aspirations. But fundamentally, the technology is sort of the gateway that they do that. And so having, a very, commercial grade, modern user experience is going to engage employees to use it more so than not. And I think what you've seen is that the past practice of sort of systems being built around process and being built around the business and being very difficult to use, and you have to be an expert to get it right, is really going away. What we're seeing now is that the design is much more around the user first and much more around making sure they never get it wrong. And making sure that regardless of whether or not you're a payroll practitioner with a CPP or a person who's the first day, you should be able to get things transacted and done in a personalized fashion and in a way that you need it communicated to you when and where and how you want, right? So whether that's on mobile, whether that's on a laptop, whether that's on your even your watch. We're even seeing a lot of that mobility push to the watches now, the smart watches. So really meeting the employee where they are and with a personalized approach that gives them in context support to drive them to the right answer each time and help them navigate those key elements in their journey. I mentioned the point about extensibility around cloud. I think what you really should focus on as a global payroll practitioner is integration. Integration is absolutely the lifeblood to global payroll functioning the way it does, in a way that allows firms to eliminate having to have maybe 20 to 30 vendors. I've heard as many as 40 vendors. Someone had one time. It was a very large organization. I was really just stunned by that. Like, who manages all that? But what you're seeing is, as cloud platforms and as integrations have become much more modern and been advanced through dynamic bidirectional data movement, you're not only seeing vendors be able to come to market with 100 plus countries under their capability, but also you're seeing, like I said before, firms able to kind of customize their solution to fit their needs and fill the white spaces that might have been there before. When you don't have that integration, when you don't have that good solid integration, we commonly see that come out in the user experience. We see it in the analytic failures where customers will say, well, it's integrated, but it's not quite what we thought it was. We're not really getting our data the way we thought we would. So you really want to look at the integration in any solution that you're picking up or thinking of taking on, and making sure that integration is going to be as dynamic as possible, connecting the platforms and flowing that data to and from, so that you can have that good user experience and the consolidated global view of your workforce. Again, when it comes to that analytic data, we certainly see the ability for firms to get access to on-demand analytic reporting, even in context of when they're taking steps in the HR system. We're seeing a lot more guidance leveraging analytics to help people make those decisions. So you've probably seen this in the benefits world a bit, where employees are getting a lot more data and a lot more help in making their benefit decisions versus having to go and ask for help or call their HR or get someone at the carrier to help them out. So things like that will continue. Payroll is another area where analytics is extremely important. We see the need like I said, we've seen this with COVID, where firms were really starving to get at the data to see what they needed to do and help them make workforce decisions in this time. And those that had, I believe, those that had the modern platforms, had the modern access to, integrations that were connecting their platforms and bringing that data to a single reliable source, had a distinct advantage in that way. We also see vendors continually taking the AI and the analytics together and infusing that throughout the process, so that, again, it is in context and it does help the user through their decision making and through their processing as it is personalized to them. Let me say it that way, so that it is in context with what they're thinking and what they're doing and what they're needing in that moment to get them to the right answer. One of the things that we believe is going to become much more prevalent in the next 5 years is the idea and the concept of augmented conversational analytics. So you're seeing a lot of platforms, particularly on the HCM side right now, bringing about the NLP capability, the natural language processing capability, to enable chatbots to push conversational analytics to the user. So maybe I can speak to my mobile and say, hey, how many employees do I have in X country? And the system can push that back to them very quickly and on demand. So I think you're going to see NLP become much more prevalent as we go forward, more in apps, more in chatbots, and more virtual assistants, but also giving the capability to help do reporting on the fly, on demand, and be able to get to those much easier. Intelligent technologies, like I mentioned, RPA, AI, ML are all absolutely going to be the game changer in payroll and the game changer fundamentally in HR as a whole. I won't dwell on this, but I think I've hit on this a lot here already. But we're seeing chatbots and virtual assistants pop up almost everywhere now. I think you're hard pressed to go to a website these days anymore without getting a chatbot to kind of come to you and say, hey, what can I help you with? Some are better than others when you ask questions, but I think you're seeing this more and more in HR, and you're seeing the goal of working towards what we're calling zero UI, an experience whereby the employee really doesn't have to touch anything or even go in and transact in the system. They can really just speak to it. They can use facial recognition. They can use various other elements, IoT and mobile, to accomplish things without ever having to actually go on to the system itself in the traditional manner that we have in the past. And we certainly see payroll vendors absolutely pushing hard on autonomous payroll processing. So obviously less mature, smaller payrolls are getting managed that way by your bigger volume vendors. So your ADPs, your SD Works, they're all developing RPA technology to help them mass produce or mass process at scale payrolls for large populations of customers. And so we continue to see that the use cases around RPA proliferating and dipping further and further into the payroll spectrum to give relief there. Just for now, when you look at the maturity of RPA and HR, I kind of brought in the ones that I think are the closest touching to payroll. Payroll is still very much emerging. I would say there's a lot of room for opportunity. But up front, what we're seeing, the use cases that vendors are bringing to the table are around the traditional sort of ticking and tying of payroll results, the validations, both pre and post processing, data, really managing data front end to make sure that data is clean and ready for processing. We're even seeing it used for things like tax validations and garnishment data entry, taking in garnishment orders and reviewing them through OCR capability, which is your optical character recognition, similar to scanning, and it can read and interpret those through AI and machine learning and apply them to the system for deducting without having to have someone actually interpret that and be sort of involved in the high volumes of those that many organizations have. You're also seeing things like data analysis and, of course, output of reporting coming about as well. And certainly the use cases are going to compound from there. I would say on the HR data side, it's continuing as well. We're seeing a lot more emphasis on the front end data in HR, getting RPA applied to it and knocking down those anomalies and issues in a less manual, or excuse me, in an automated way, removing that manual effort. And of course, benefits has been a little bit slow behind that, but it's coming along. And I think right now it's really been used mostly in helping employees make decisions, helping implement plans, and really addressing enrollee support and that sort of thing. When you look at where payroll vendors are investing in RPA, this is a major area of investment, and it is a big emphasis in these firms' roadmaps, and really because they are processing such high volumes, and RPA can give such predictable outcomes, especially once it's been enabled with cognitive capabilities like AI and machine learning and NLP. You're going to see this progress to be even more like I said, towards the fully autonomous spectrum of processing payroll in a touchless manner. Right now, again, most of the cases are centering on data migration, data validations, many of the things I talked about previously. But what you're next seeing is the chatbots enabled with more NLP to derive virtual assistants that will actually transact for you or give you back information to help you transact. And then gradually we're getting to that point where they will actually update the systems and certainly monitor payroll processing in a predictive manner to help payroll managers understand where they need to be focusing their attention, giving them the opportunity. Fundamentally, overall, all of this will give opportunity to provide payroll with applying their expertise in a much more strategic way, helping the business do other things, maybe working with analytic data, or helping them with mergers and acquisitions and things like that. So helping payroll get away from having to do this kind of heavy lifting all the time and doing all of this manual work is really what all of these pieces are about, and giving payroll back the time to be a more strategic partner is really the key outcome here for the practice. I think, how am I doing on time? I think I'm just about at the end, right around where we said we wanted to stop. But I wanted to just touch on a couple of good examples of what I think Nextgen solutions are coming about that are giving you a context of what some of these things I've talked about. So one is the Nextgen platforms that ADP has been bringing out. They have both a new Nextgen payroll engine, which is the future engine that they expect to use for all customers long term. It's very modernized. It has a really strong country-specific policy-based rule set that it's built on, and then it is fundamentally incorporated with AI as everywhere. They call it AI everywhere, but fundamentally it really is about putting AI in position, and often it's in the background where you don't even realize it, to drive that extreme personalization that I talked about. And of course, it's going to support both the traditional and the freelance worker. Again, mobile first design, 100% designed for a mobile user. It is person-centric to, again, give that personalization and drive notifications to employees to remind them of things they might need to think about on the way, along the way. So for example, they show a good example of this is a gig worker who might have multiple positions that happen to be with ADP under different employers. It might give them notifications to say, hey, you need to consider your tax withholding. If you want to stay on pace with whatever you've put in as your goals for this year in terms of your tax limits and that sort of thing, it might give you notifications that, hey, you might want to have a little bit more deducted from the next few checks so that you can hit that goal, or even proactive reminders to help them throughout the year to make those decisions, as well as integration to things like wearables. So I mentioned the Apple Watch earlier. ADP is pushing more to the Apple Watch. And I believe they also support the Samsung Watch as well, but they are pushing things like the payslip to the watch for people to see their results immediately. But also, I believe the other use cases they're looking at is around time entry or time approvals or something like that. So you're going to see more use cases here around that, and I think you'll see more information pushed out to wearables where it makes sense. And other vendors have certainly followed right behind that. And then again, one of the things I like about this system is the continuous pay calculation capability, which is native and gives them the ability. You've probably seen this as well in Dayforce and some, maybe even a couple of other platforms where they're preparing their own on-demand payroll capability, but also certainly partnering with some of the key partners out there that are in the marketplace, like Rapid and some of the other ones that you can tap into and integrate. And again, very person-centric approach to this platform, and they're doing the same thing here with HCM. They have a Nextgen HCM with a lot of the very same elements to it. But one of the other things I really like too about this, their approach is their sort of bring your own data. they've taken a very dynamic approach to letting people bring data into their environment to set up their environment in any method that you have. Whether that's a spreadsheet, whether that's another vendor's, even a scan of another vendor's report, output report. I've seen them actually show how they can migrate the data off of those various formats and bring it into their system and identify anomalies within moments, right? And not have to go through that long, difficult, and often failure-plagued migration of data. Again, this is where you're seeing the RPA, the AI, machine learning, at play behind the scenes, helping to accomplish those things. And then lastly, I think a really good example of an RPA process, or excuse me, an RPA solution that is not sort of behind the scenes. Many of the vendor solutions that you'll see for RPA are really meant to support their operations on the back end to deliver more, reliable results and outcomes to their customers. But one of the things that we've seen is OneSource Virtual. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. If you're not, they're a Workday partner, or excuse me, a prominent Workday partner, very long time Workday partner that operates payroll and HR outsourcing for firms leveraging the Workday platform exclusively. And one of the things that they have built is a RPAS program offering whereby middle market firms and even really any size firm that needs or has the volume can tap into an RPA capability to address various different use cases within their payroll data, or excuse me, their payroll operations. Currently, that's centered around payroll data, timekeeping, and various life event monitoring, and like I said earlier about data scrubbing. And we see them, what they're doing is they're building out these digital workers and really creating kind of these workers that will focus on key processes and be bundled in this program, and with the goal of getting upwards of over 100 use cases is their long-term roadmap. But I think the cool thing about this is that it's very tightly integrated with Workday. It's also tightly integrated with OSV's Atmosphere service platform, but it also gives you the ability to tap into a very upmarket, I would say, capability that can be expensive if you think about what it takes to sort of deploy this and kind of get it going, get it working, and sort out the programming and such. You can walk right into this turnkey, and you're in a situation where you can start to tap into RPA in your organization, short of having to go through all of that development. So I think these are the type of things I think you're going to continue to see coming about. And we expect, I've stayed very closely with OSV on this since they launched it and have been following the use cases. And I know they use a very similar approach to their to the Workday process of gathering feedback from customers to shape what the next use cases are. And they've even done some of these things, sort of live voting and that sort of thing in the past. So I think if you are a Workday user, this is something you might want to look at and just have a look at. It is a very interesting thing that I think you might see starting to come about with other platforms as well. But I think OSV got out there a bit ahead of everyone with that. So I think these are the types of things that you're what I mean when we say next gen. Okay, so I think we're at the point of questions. Fidelma, do you want me to just open it back up to you? I think we also might have missed our poll questions too.
I might need to turn back on my mute on my camera. There we go. Well, Pete, that was fantastically interesting. I have a whole bunch of questions, and I'm sure there's some lively ones coming in here. I'll wait to hear from Aoife. And so I might just jump in with a couple of my questions. Yes, we did forget the poll. We could still probably run the polls. Maybe
I could launch the poll now. No problem at all.
Yeah, good. I was worried about hitting the time mark, so I forgot to ask you about that.
Yeah, we're doing well. Do you want to read it out there?
So what technology do you use to manage your global payroll? So we've got aggregator platform, shared cloud space or vendor technology, HR technology platform, no technology for managing global payroll or other. So we'll just give a few minutes there just to for everyone to answer the poll, so I can see responses coming in now.
Okay.
I'm really happy to see the no technology for managing global payroll going down. I saw it large when it started. Someone jumped in pretty quick. I think it was a large number, but yeah, good.
Okay. Well, we'll see. I might just while that's running and people are voting for their option, I might just jump in with a question, Pete, if
Yeah,
that's okay.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to ask was, so you mentioned a lot about the RPA and that like cloud has become a given at this point. I totally agree with you. And the RPA is becoming more and more implemented and the use cases are becoming broader. Um, Now in Payslip, we're talking to companies who have a tech mindset or have decided to go down that path. So we're probably talking to the segment that have already decided to do something. But we still find that companies can find it difficult to build out business cases for the RPA investment. And some of them might still be looking kind of back to where the company is now rather than where it's going forward and the new challenges it's going to face. Do you have any kind of suggestions on how they can best approach the business case preparation for RPA investment?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and I'll actually kind of tell you that how I think about it from the viewpoint of the vendors when I talk to vendors. So when vendors started to push on RPA, gosh, I guess probably 4 years ago now, or even more, I noticed that vendors were not investing in RPA to invest in RPA, right? It was about addressing a specific problem or challenge they were having. So I think that what you've seen is that they have gone out and said, it's not so much, here's $1 million, go get some RPA. It's here's the funds to go and solve that problem, right? So I think maybe that's probably, every organization is going to be different. Every use case is going to be different, or excuse me, every business case is going to be different. But I think what you have to really do for that is really focus in on what is the specific, very specific problem or challenge that you're trying to solve, and test it, right? Is it really as big a problem as you think it is? Does it have the monetary impact that warrants, RPA, or the volume and the monetary impact? So I think it's really about just really sharpening your focus to say, what are we trying to solve specifically with this program? And from there, I think those become a little bit more clear and maybe a little bit easier to justify. But also too, sometimes you can tap into that through outsourcing, right? You can get into that by way of being with an outsourced firm. Anyone that is large enough to have the volumes to even have RPA should be proliferating that, and that should be something that you're looking at, and you can tap into that as well, which sort of maybe eliminates the business case at that level, but maybe enables it at a bigger level where you're saying, look, we're going to maybe outsource and we're going to do some transformation and we'll get some RPA and some other things to go with it. So I think it's really just honing in on exactly what you're trying to solve might be helpful in those cases.
Okay, great. And I do have a question I want to come back to, but we might go to, do you want to run the second poll maybe first, and then we can look at the responses to both? Would that be okay?
Sure,
you
yeah.
could run the second poll, and
Yeah,
then
well, I can actually share the responses now from the first one, if that. So there's our responses there from the first one.
Okay, so what technology do you use to manage your global payroll? So 25% are using aggregator platforms. That's good. 25% shared cloud space or vendor tech. So that's probably a data storage and transfer facility, I imagine. HR tech platform 8%, and no technology 17, and then 25 is other. So how would you read that, Pete? What would your initial response be to that?
That's a pretty good balance. I think that's about what we would probably expect. I was surprised to see the HR technology low, but I guess we're talking global, so that's common. That's going to be common. But yeah, the 17% with no technology, that scares me. I'd love to see you all get onto some technology, but I think that balance of aggregators to shared probably shared cloud is probably about right.
Yeah, and I think if this were a different type of session, I would ask the next question, which is what use cases does your technology deliver? Because I know when we talk to lots of companies in the market, the main purpose of like the aggregator platform naturally is to share the data across all the stakeholders involved in the process, and then sometimes some reporting. And so it's always interesting to know, are there other use cases which are being included in there? Okay, great. So maybe we can run the second one. We'll read through that and then I'll hop in. I have a little bit of a naughty question to ask you, Pete, if that's okay.
No worries.
So over to you.
Okay, so what best describes the organization's usage of data insights and analytics in global payroll? So you're actively using data analytics. Oh, I have that the wrong way around now. Data analytics and insights in global payroll. Not using data analytics and insights currently, but actively sourcing tools. Not using data insights and analytics currently in global payroll, but plan to. We spend a lot of resource time preparing data insights and analytics. We don't use payroll data to provide data insights and analytics.
Okay.
So go ahead and let people are voting now.
Okay, excellent. While that runs, then I'm going to pop in with my question. You might have seen I just had a little mini visitor on my webcam there. Someone came to give me flowers. So,
lucky you.
Yeah, I've got some little flowers here. So my naughty question is, I'm really interested in what you talked about for the ADP tool. And I was like taking some notes on that, and it sounds super. I can really understand. And we were talking about global payroll, and I know you mentioned it was built from a country-specific policy and rule set perspective. So I'm interpreting that it does serve purpose for global payroll. We like a very lively conversation across the market at the moment is what the plans are with ADP Streamline and migration across to Celergo. So the AI Anywhere technology that you're mentioning, is that incorporated into Streamline, or is that a separate technology offering that ADP are now offering? And how does it fit with that migration conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say fundamentally ADP and Celergo, when they came together, obviously what they've communicated is that Celergo has won out as the technology platform for their global payroll offering, right? The combined Streamline and Celergo capabilities, right, are now really fundamentally Celergo is what I'm understanding that they're really preferring to go to market with. What they're going to do with the Nextgen platforms is hopefully replace their legacy platforms long term, right? They have a lot of customers, so they'll need to be very careful with that. For now, the engines under Streamline and Celergo is an aggregator, are going to be ICP provided under their Streamline arrangements or Celergo's. I'm sure they're having to kind of merge all those because I bet they have some regional overlap with partners. So fundamentally, for the foreseeable future, I think you're going to still be, if you go to ADP for global payroll, you're going to still be fundamentally getting Celergo Streamline together. Really, it's going to be Celergo most likely on the front end, and then it'll be the ICP network underneath that, and ADP's own. They have plenty of delivery centers in some larger geographies where they can support things themselves, but where they don't, they'll tap into ICPs. But longer term, the goal is to take the Nextgen payroll engine will ultimately long term be the engine to process payroll for everyone globally once they've got that ready to go. And the same hopefully for their HCM, their Nextgen HCM. I believe their expectation is long term to begin that being the go-to and be migrating customers to that over time. But they're by no means doing away with things right now. So if you have those solutions, I believe it's going to be business as usual. They'll continue to support them. They're continuing to build them out. But fundamentally, the payroll engine is their goal is to get to that dynamic engine globally, long term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big objective, and people have tried and stopped it before. So we saw Workday built out the engines for 4 countries, and then after France, they took a pause, and then they went a different path. And it is very expensive to invest in building out payroll engines and maintain that from a technology perspective. So if what I understand then is the AI tool you're talking about is running in parallel to their other technologies like Streamline and Global View. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know how they've infused AI on that side. I have to believe maybe not yet. It just depends. I mean, obviously they've connected Data Cloud and other elements, so there are bits of that there. But by design, this platform is being built with the AI everywhere at the base. So from the beginning, mobile first, AI everywhere. For highly personalization, but also I think to answer your question about how they're going to be able to do that where maybe others haven't in the past is the low code architecture that they're using. It's making it very easy for them to enable buyers to make mini apps, use mini apps to connect and supplement their white spaces or things that they want to use in their firms, but also giving them the ability to quickly bring these things about and layer in that AI layer across these next-gen platforms.
Okay, super. Well, they have the network of partners that should hopefully be able to contribute to that. So that's super, very exciting. We'll watch that space. Okay, we might run back to the results from the second poll and see what's happening here.
Yeah.
So what describes your organization's use of data insight and analytics in global payroll? 0% say actively using it in global payroll. Wow, that's a big result. We've 10% not actively using it, but currently sourcing tools. So that's good. 10% are on the path. 40% not using it, but would like to or plan to. So that sounds more midterm to long term. We spend a lot of resource time preparing data insights and analytics. I would believe that, and we don't use payroll data at all. So it does sound like the 20% saying they're not using it all can be added probably to some of the first few percentages, because they're not necessarily using a tool at least. Spending a lot of resource time preparing data insights and analytics would be an insight that we have also from a lot of companies in the market. So before they come to us, usually they have a combination of data sources in a multi-vendor landscape. They are receiving data in multi-formats, and then they're coming to us to help them standardize the process and standardize the data. And then that's the first step in providing a base for consolidated data across a multi-country environment. So before they've gotten to that, there are very often finance and payroll people who spend several days every month at a key time of the month trying to bring together and mash up the data into a consolidated standardized format. So there's lots of opportunity here for more tool delivery, I think. Pete, what would your thoughts be?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's probably, this isn't surprising. I think global payroll, it is probably an area that's still maturing in this regard, and many firms are still on that journey of getting to maybe a more modern solution or consolidating vendors. So yeah, not surprising to see there's still a lot of manual effort going, but good to see some are already kind of actively getting in there, and hopefully that trend will go up every year as we go forward, especially as these solutions mature.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, Aoife, do we want to come in with any other questions there?
There's none currently here. I don't know if anyone has any questions they would like to ask Pete before we finish up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else?
I have one more because I'm never shy to ask questions.
No,
sorry, keep on your toes. No, so we're coming back to like the COVID environment that we've all gone through, and I totally endorse what you said earlier about how the payroll community has kept the whole world of work moving very well and in difficult circumstances. How much do you think the COVID-19 remote working that was like activated overnight with major urgency has kind of jump-started companies' thoughts processes about having a technology that would help them manage their global payroll or standardize their documents, standardize their data, switch tasks across geodiverse teams? Do you think it has activated that thought, and do you think there will be some action out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone was sort of caught, somewhat off guard. Maybe some were caught off guard, maybe not. I think some were in better positions than others if they had modern situation or modern landscapes. For example, if you listen, I don't know if you've noticed this, but Niamo has done a webinar on this. I know Dayforce has talked to me about this. When you look at those firms, they're boasting the ability that they converted. I actually had a conversation with Dayforce yesterday. I think they said they converted 99%, 97, 98% of their employees to work from home within around the entire Ceridian workforce in 24 hours. The only people who were going into an office were the entirely essential print, people who had to do print, that sort of thing, like 100 people or something. And the reason they were able to do that is the agility of their solution, right? They've adopted it. They fully engage with it. It's cloud-based. It's all the modern things that you would want. So, Niamo in the same way was able to cut over and do that by using the tools they actually go to market with and sell to their customers. They use the exact same tools in their own HR and payroll, and they were able to successfully cut over, in a very rapid time frame. So I think that kind of shows you that this is possible. Many firms pulled it off. I mean, I haven't spoken to anyone yet who said to me that they weren't impressed with how quickly they were able to do the work, cut over to work from home when they had kind of been, sort of lagging and maybe exploring some of that in the past. And I think it was just out of necessity, right? Their business survival kind of required it or demanded it, and maybe even the law in many cases. So I think it's going to continue, and I think it's going to make a lot of people. I think what we're hearing too is vendors are telling me that a lot of the conversations might have shifted away from transformation momentarily while people are focused on this and while budgets are being suppressed. But what it hasn't done is suppressed the viewpoint that de-risking things like payroll and HR is absolutely important for the future. So I think this will continue to go. I think we will continue to see work from home being more of the norm and less of the exception. I think every day you see another business, a major company that comes out and says, they're shuttering their offices and letting people work from home entirely, whether it's across numerous different sectors. Even Apple, I believe, has said they're going to shut down some of their very, very profitable stores and just shift them completely online in select areas, in select cities. So I think this will continue to go about, and I think firms are seeing that having modern capabilities like this is really going to put you in a position to be much more agile and much more able to flex and move with these unpredictable situations, and certainly enable firms to support things like work from home and various different changes that are going to happen in the norms.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? I'm not positive if I did.
It does, yeah, it does. And the other part that we've seen out of it is the question that has arisen is examples of an employee in London who's Spanish saying to their employer, I'm Spanish and have been working from home here in London for 3 months. I prefer to work from home in Madrid. Thanks very much, and see my family. Can I relocate there until such time or forever? And now employers are wondering, well, what do we do here? Because while they may have supported incidents before for temporary periods, if they start approving it, it becomes a precedent and then suddenly it becomes a practice. So I know Mark Zuckerberg was very overt about this recently on Facebook and said people can decide by the end of the year, and if they want to stay at home, then the payroll will be adapted to the local environment, which is very doable, I imagine, from the US if you're using ADP, Ultimate, Workday, because they have all the states built into their engines. If you're in a European environment and suddenly you have random employees relocating to lots of different cities around Europe, lots of questions arise about employment tax coverage, non-resident employer status, and social security payments. So I think the work of the payroll professional and team could become very complicated. What was perhaps a UK payroll team can become an international payroll team by accident rather than by plan. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. No, I don't know if I have much to add to that. Absolutely, I completely think that that's a very plausible trend that could come about. We'll have to keep our eye on it. I haven't seen anyone talking about that yet, but that's a really interesting point. Yeah,
I've seen a little bit of it here. So it might be very present in Europe because you don't that Ultimate Software or ADP engine that can do all of Europe. So I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this session has been fantastically useful, and we can see that the attendees have stayed on till the bitter end. So hopefully it wasn't dragged out questions imposed on them by me. I think the content has been really, really interesting. You have great oversight of the industry, and I learn from you every time I hear you speak and read your research from NelsonHall, Pete. So keep going, keep reading and listening. So thank you very much for sharing it today. And we'll share further information. Do you want to say one last word maybe about your buyer group, Pete, that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, no, just again, we do offer our buyers intelligence group. It's completely complimentary. We actually sanitize that and keep both on the site, but also on any functions that we do. We keep vendors and consultants out of that, so that there's no selling. We don't sell into that group either. We're happy to help them if they want to purchase some research or something. But fundamentally, if you'd like to be a part of our next, we're holding quarterly buyer updates, and it's a really good dialogue. We did one in June, and it was quite successful. We had I think around 20 or so people come on from various different countries and companies, and we just had a dialogue about what we're seeing in the HR space, and just traded conversation, really presented a little bit, and really just tried to make it conversational. So if you want to be a part of those things, again, even that webinar, we don't allow vendors in, we don't allow selling. It's purely just a dialogue. So if you want to be a part of some of those insights, let Fidelma know or Aoife know, and they'll get your email to me, and I can submit it to our buyers group team, and they will make sure they reach out to you and get you included in that. And then as those events come out, you'll get notified of that. And I think you can also even subscribe to different blogs and such in there as well. So yeah, if you're interested, just let us know, and we're happy to include you.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so thank you very much, Pete, from NelsonHall, and we'll all be seeking out the research on an ongoing basis, and we're happy to receive any comments or questions or inquiries from the GPMI Dublin chapter membership today to be introduced to you for the buyer group. I think that would be very useful to many people.
Yep, absolutely. We'd love to have them.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye.